A harrowing report into grooming gangs in Rochdale has found that girls were left at the mercy of paedophiles because of failures by police. A damning 173-page report concluded that there were at least 74 children being sexually exploited between 2004 and 2013, and in 48 of those cases, there were serious failures to protect them. There are also 96 men still deemed a potential risk to children who are yet to be prosecuted. The Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police admitted the victims have been let down.
It speaks to the systemic failure of various agencies to pull together and do the obvious and the right thing. And above all, it outlines in painful detail all of those missed opportunities where decisive action could and should have been taken to prevent, disrupt, and prosecute the scourge of what has been evidenced to have been the widespread abuse of children in Rochdale some 10 to 20 years ago.
Joining me now is Maggie Oliver, a former detective for Greater Manchester Police, who resigned to expose their failures over this particular scandal. Maggie, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Obviously, what was said today vindicates all that you said and all that you did and all that you tried to do when you tried to lift the lid on this, expose what was going on and bring it to public attention. Also, most particularly, to rescue the children involved and stop it happening. So can you tell people what was going on and what was not going on? What was happening to these children and what were the people who were supposed to be protecting them doing instead of protecting them?
The simple answer to that, Vanessa, is that they were protecting the organisation. They were failing to put resources into the investigation and prosecution of child abusers. Systemic failures, a lack of prioritising these cases. And I don't disagree with what the Chief Constable said there, but what I do say is that these failures are not failures of the past. My work in the Maggie Oliver Foundation now, we are supporting and advocating for victims every single day, and many of those are experiencing exactly what was happening 12 years ago. This report I could have written 12 years ago. I am extremely grateful to Andy Burnham and to Malcolm and Gary, who wrote this review, for allowing me to take victims to be interviewed themselves. But what I want the media to do is to look beyond this case. I would draw your attention to the recent drama about Mr. Bates and the post office,
Yes.
because that is really an example of where institutions are more interested in protecting their reputations than in listening to what is actually happening on the ground.
But Maggie, in the case of the post office, we understand the institution is the post office and it's the post office reputation being protected. That we understand. We think it's wrong, it's appalling, but that's what was going on. But in this instance, what is the institution that was being protected, and how does a police force protect itself by failing to prosecute paedophiles, by failing to listen to children who are being sexually abused? Where's the protecting going on here, and why?
The protection, Vanessa, is that it has taken 12 years of me and the children that I was supporting at the time fighting for this truth to be shared. And the fact is that really the complaint system is not fit for purpose. The protection is to say that this was a mistake of the past. They are not acknowledging that those failures and those victims that are being failed today still have nowhere to go. They are being silenced, and it's only through my voice, the voice of the foundation, and others who have also lost their jobs, who can bring those cases into the public arena. You know, we heard the post office covered up what was happening behind the scenes. It was one whistleblower, finally, who spoke out about Fujitsu being able to access the computers. I am saying that these truths were known 12 years ago. I went to the Chief Constable. The girls in that case knew that they were being let down. Amber, for instance, was being criminalised. She was portrayed as a child abuser. It's taken 12 years for them to hold their hands up and say, no, she wasn't. She was a victim. She was threatened at gunpoint. She was threatened at knife point. If she spoke out about what was happening to her, she would be killed. And yet the authorities chose to portray her as an abuser on the indictment because it was a tactical option to get her evidence into court when they had dropped her as a victim. No arrest, no caution, not being made aware of what was being said about her, and pretending that she was a paedophile. She nearly lost her kids. 12 years to get that truth to be told. The CPS, even in this report to this day, are still saying that that was an option that they would use again. So I'm saying that these are systemic changes that are needed. We need a system that is not hiding the truth. As Andy Burnham says, we need a duty of candor. I want to see the individuals who made these decisions to close this job down to be held legally accountable. Today, we have not had anybody held accountable in a position of authority. This is not the fault of police officers and detectives on the ground. It is the fault of leadership, of a lack of resources, of a lack of prioritization. And when they are rumbled, colluding together to prevent that truth from being told, while protecting the organization by saying lessons have been learned. I am telling you from my work today, those lessons have not been learned, Vanessa.
How much of what happened, these appalling offences meted out against innocent, usually young girls, how much of that was aided and abetted by some kind of reluctance to show what was wrongly considered might be regarded as racism, so that they were primarily Asian men, they were perpetrating these crimes against young white girls from poor backgrounds who had nobody to speak up for them, who had no voice to be heard, and it was considered by police forces that, you know, it wouldn't look good, it wouldn't seem right, they might open themselves up to accusations of racism if they pursued these almost 100% men of Asian backgrounds who were doing this to white girls. Is that a big part of this?
I think maybe in the past, Vanessa, it was. I've always said that I don't care where a paedophile comes from, what colour his skin is, whether he's a priest in the Catholic Church or Jeffrey Epstein, it doesn't matter. The law in this country says you cannot have sex with a 12-year-old child. That is rape. And yet the man who got Ruby pregnant when she was just 13 wasn't even charged with rape. He was out of prison in less than 4 years. He is now back in Rochdale. Ruby, the young girl that he got pregnant, bumped into her in the local Asda. She didn't even know he was out of prison. These are systemic problems in a system that doesn't work, that tiptoes around the fact that a paedophile is a paedophile wherever they come from. I think what I would say now, though, Vanessa, is that the debate has moved on. I think that is accepted, that this particular kind of crime has got that makeup of offenders and victims. But there are many other victims of sexual abuse, of violence against women and girls, who are also being failed today. Many, you know, when you look at the statistics, less than 2% of every reported rape ever makes court. And that is not even taking into account all those rapes that are underreported. We have a complaint system that is completely unfit for purpose. Police marking their own homework. If somebody complains, it is that police force that investigates that complaint. They send it onto the IOPC only if they choose to do so. So there is no independent scrutiny of these failures, and we need radical change to the system so that when somebody comes forward with a complaint, or a whistleblower like myself who had genuine concerns, that they are listened to. Every page of this report, Vanessa, I could have written 12 years ago. If anybody wants to read my book, published in 2019, it will say exactly what is in this report. It should not have taken 12 years.
Do you have the impression that there are still the same sorts of gangs operating, that the kind of structure by which these terrible paedophilic crimes have been perpetrated still exists in pretty much the same way, and the sorts of underage girls who are being targeted are pretty much the same sorts of girls from the same backgrounds? Or has that at least moved on in any way in the last 15 years?
I think if there is anything that I take from this, it is that now there is an awareness of what the problem is, thanks to, my fight to expose this. The country now knows the truth of the matter and can spot these cases. I think victims are still being failed in monumental numbers. And it isn't just victims of grooming gangs, it is victims in general of violence against women and girls, often being criminalized, often being silenced. And I am talking about the cases. I am an expert in this now, Vanessa. I didn't want to be, but it has haunted me. It's followed me every step of the way for the past 20 years. And I am saying to you that we need radical overhauls of our criminal justice system. We need proper funding, proper resourcing, proper training of police officers, and without serious attention, investment, commitment, those changes won't come about. And a chief constable saying that things have changed isn't the answer that's needed. It is scrutiny on where they're going wrong, how improvements can be made, and not a pretense that these are problems of the past when they clearly are not. And I know that from my day-to-day work now, not 12 years ago, now.
Maggie, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And you're still fighting that good fight you've been fighting for so many years. Thank you very much indeed. If you yourself have been affected by any of the issues discussed, do please go to talk.tv/helplines. You'll find their relevant resources and excellent advice.